Now, I want to get Max Keiser on to cover the waterfront. We have another guest coming in to break down the latest on the mortgage scandals. There's been big rulings and admissions that they're taking tens of thousands of houses that were already paid for fraudulently, and the courts are letting them do it. But I wanted to get Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com, syndicated radio host, a columnist, and, of course, TV host for RT, retired stockbroker, on, because he was 2 months late, but he predicted what would happen with the bond market, that the interest rates would go up. That's now happened like he said it would. The beginning of it has. And I wanted to get his take on Egypt, that he's been multiple times during all these different revolutions with the West trying to hijack them. I want to get his take on everybody from Glenn Danzig to Oliver Stone coming out and saying Obama is a snake, don't trust him. And I wanted to get his take on other things that are developing, the war on the press with Greenwald having his partner stopped and all his data stolen, flying into the UK. We're going to talk about all that. So, Max Keiser, thank you for coming on. I've thrown out a lot of pieces of info there. What do you want to tackle first?
I just want to pump up the energy. I want to pump it up. I feel I've been listening to the show, and we need to pump it up. Let's get that energy going. Now, your people contacted me and they said, "Oh, let's talk about the Hindenburg omen." Of course, it's very exciting, but the bond market is, as I said a year ago on your show, in around April of 2012, I said at around April 15th of 2013 that the bond market would peak. It peaked about 2 weeks later, not 2 months, 2 weeks later, and it's been going down ever since, Alex. So the bond market is now reversing a 30-year trend. And this is the beginning of the bond-apocalypse, and this is the beginning of the massive unwinding. This is the beginning now of the Ponzi scheme known as the American and UK economies now heading into the toilet. This is it. This is what we've been talking about, and it's happening now, and it's getting quite serious because interest rates are now starting to raise everyone's mortgage rates, everyone's cost of capital, and it's causing corporations, like you talked about Coca-Cola earlier. Coca-Cola, their sales are collapsing because baby boomers don't want to be poisoned by Coca-Cola anymore. So Coca-Cola is becoming quite desperate, and they can't get the cheap money anymore because for years, these big companies funded themselves with interest rates near 0% or a rising bond market. Now that's all reversed. They're getting more desperate, and they're engaging in more desperate acts. And this is why you've seen the corruption in the medical establishment in America. The Wall Street, of course, is highly corrupted. The corruption now is spreading to every facet of American life, and that's going to only increase because you can't get access to cheap money anymore because the 30-year bond bull market ended, just as I predicted.
Sure. But, I mean, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I mean, to be technical, the middle of last year, you said by the end of April, you believed that the bond market would implode. And then about 2 months after that, it did begin to implode. And I know
it started 2 weeks later. Interest rates started to move up. So that is what I said.
6 one way, half a dozen the other. The point is you were right. So tell us what's coming next.
Well, let me put this into context. Had you made a bet against bonds at the appropriate time, you would be up a substantial percentage point, okay? So that's the key metric always is, what have I done for you lately? And I was at Bilderberg, and I met some of your followers at Bilderberg, and somebody came up to me and they said, what would be the single investment you would make right now? And I said, sell short TLT, which is a listed exchange-traded fund.
No, I saw you do that. I saw you do that.
And that investment's now up substantially in just a few months. So that's the kind of trend analysis that, so going forward, Alex, the bond market, as I've said, is heading into this secular bear market, which means interest rates are going to keep going up. And this means that the cost of funds for these corporations and for the military and for all these contractors, it keeps rising. And so to keep themselves making money, they're going to get more desperate. They're going to be more stealing of money out of bank accounts like we saw in Cyprus or as we saw in MF Global. So you're going to see more of that going on. People just, what they call it bailing in, but it's just confiscation of wealth. You're going to see more capital controls like you see in India. They're trying to prevent the passage of gold into India, so that's a capital control. You're going to see all the invasiveness and the NSA scandal and the PRISM scandal is all about bankers and industrialists wanting to get together to stop anyone's attempt to come up with anything that would compete with this very corrupt banking system. That's why they hate Bitcoin, because Bitcoin competes with the corrupt banking system. That's why they hate it. So the desperation level is only going to increase. And we saw this in the UK with this detainment of David Miranda, who is the partner of Glenn Greenwald. He was detained for 9 hours under the Anti-Terrorism Act at Heathrow Airport right here in London. So they're equating journalism or somebody who knows a journalist with a terrorist. That's an act of desperation. In my opinion, the point I try to make is I tie things to economics. And for 30 years, the cost of money has gotten progressively cheaper because the bond market was going through this bull market. But that bull market in bonds has been shown to be a Ponzi scheme. It's unsustainable. Now interest rates are rising. So this level of desperation will just increase exponentially, I believe. So now we're at really the end game, I think, Alex.
Now, expanding on this, the UK, as you know, a few years ago said that everybody in Iceland was a terrorist, that they couldn't have their bank accounts, they couldn't fly out because they were balking at paying foreign banks' debts off. But instead, the government responded, you were obviously over there reporting on it, by arresting the different ministers, and it turned out 90+% of the debt was not theirs, and they were happy to pay the debt that was actually theirs. So now that's been, unfortunately, not really duplicated anywhere else in the world to any extent, maybe a little bit in Italy. So now we see the same paradigm. Reporters are now terrorists. Their friends are now terrorists. Their associates are now terrorists. And we have a Time reporter who literally is the spitting image of a tool bag coming out saying, let's kill Assange. I mean, even if you're going to kill somebody, you don't brag about it in public. Michael Grunewald. I mean, where are they coming up with these wannabe tough guys who think it's real manly to talk about killing journalists and whistleblowers? I mean, just a parade of just sycophantic fops begging for tyranny.
Well, it's been now exposed because for years, again, whether it's the rising house prices in the UK or rising stock prices in America, people overlook a lot of corruption if they think they're making money or they think that they're going to benefit in some way. And then once the tide goes out and people start losing money, then these people are revealed for what they really are, just stool pigeons, for a very corrupt neo-fascist regime as you have now in America and in the UK. Now, I just want to touch on a very important trend here, which we've been talking about for years, is in the gold market, the price of gold has been really kept down over the years by central banks like the Bank of England and others selling their sovereign gold or leasing it to the various banks around the world who in turn sell the gold. And what we just found out, this is really a hot story. Alistair McLeod of goldmoney.com broke this story on my show a couple of weeks ago. The Bank of England was caught having leased out 1,500 tons of gold that now, it turns out, has been sold, is now in the possession of people in Asia, China and India. So now the Bank of England is exposed to this enormous liability. And they just got this new central banker, Mark Carney, in from Canada. He has yet to make a comment on it. But now the Bank of England, after having sold 60% of their gold about 12 years ago to bail Goldman Sachs out, they've now been caught leasing out and then selling 1,500 tons of gold that's not their gold. They are the custodian for other countries' gold. Germany, as you know, wanted 300 tons of gold delivered to them from New York. They've been told they can't have their gold. Venezuela took their gold. So all of the gold Ponzi scheme, all of the shenanigans in the gold market where these central banks, to make a quick buck, have been coordinating and colluding in sales and leases that end up flooding the system with paper money. And the London Bullion Market Association, by the way, is leveraged 100 to 1. There is now, this is my point, there is now a run in the gold market. Just like you have a bank run, what we saw with Northern Rock here in the UK, there is now a run on the bullion banks, a run on the central bank's gold supply here in the UK and around the world. The fractional gold system, fractional reserve gold system, is now under attack. You see two major indications of this. One is
by the way, you're not the only person saying that. We got to go to break, Max. When we come back, finish up with the world markets, gold, and what's going to happen to some of the different currency trades if the dollar dies, where you think that's going, and then briefly your take on Egypt. We'll come back with Max Keiser. Up on INFOWARS.com right now, a story that's breaking. that's exclusive to INFOWARS.com. TSA to purchase 3.5 million rounds of ammunition, enough for its agents to fire 9,400 bullets a day every day of the year. 365 days a year. How are they going to spend that? They'll have MSNBC come out and say it doesn't exist. Oh, and I want to ask Max Keiser, is he even allowed to come on my show anymore? I know he pulls his own strings, or at least Stacey does. I mean, this is now, they've declared I'm deeply racist.